What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Whew. I took a hot second before I hit the record button on this one. I rewatched the game on the condensed version over on NFL Plus and just took some time to think and marinate on this one a little bit because this was a really difficult game in so many facets for so many reasons. And clearly, it's not just one game. This is the Packers team for the most part that we've seen through 6 games now. And you can say like their record is their record. 3-3 might be generous for the way that this team has played through 6 games so far. You guys know me probably well enough, unless this is your first time watching this, that I am generally very optimistic about the Packers. And I've said on numerous occasions, usually the tape isn't quite as bad as it seems initially. And a lot of times when you win big, it's usually not quite as good as you thought initially. I'll hold full judgment until I see the All-22. That's not out quite yet. But on rewatch, it was just as bad, if not worse, than it felt, certainly watching it live. And there will be a lot of reactions to this game. We will hear a lot of diagnosis for what's wrong with the Packers through the first 6 weeks of this season. I'm sure there will be a lot of Davante Adams, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Aaron Rodgers, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of front office, Joe Barry, Matt LaFleur, all of it, right? The truth is, and I tweeted this out right after the game, that there is truly nothing, and I mean this in the fullest sense, there is nothing that this Packers team does well at this time, or at least not well enough. Point to it, right? They're not getting turnovers. They're not winning the turnover battle. They're not converting third downs. The quarterback play is not good enough. Passing the ball is not good enough. Running the ball is not good enough. Defense is completely inconsistent. They can't come up with big plays. They can't stop the run. They can't tackle. They can't block up front. Special teams is now once again awful. This is another brutal performance from the special teams. There is nothing that you can point to. There's a couple players that you can point to, by the way. Let's throw, if you're looking for a positive in this game, at first glance, I thought Jaire Alexander had a really nice game in this game. If you're looking for any other positives, you're probably not going to get it out of this show today. I'm just telling you right up, being totally real, because it doesn't deserve it. The Packers don't deserve any benefit of the doubt for the product that they're putting on the field right now. And like I said, there is nothing that I can point to and say, this is what they're doing well right now. Not game planning, not scheming, not coaching, not getting the most out of their players, not executing, none of it. None of the X's and O's, not the Jimmies and Joes, none of it. There is nothing that you can point to and say, this is something they could lean on moving forward, or I think they're just a hair away from this moving forward. There is nothing. I think we do see flashes out of this defense. I do, but flashes against who? Zach Wilson, Bailey Zappi, Daniel Jones, Tom Brady with no receivers. And by the way, the Bucs are 3-3, so it's whatever. They have not performed up to expectations, and that's the best of anything, right? Is a extremely inconsistent defense that is still performing far below the expectations that we had for them going into the season. And let me ask this, and I'll start from an offensive standpoint. There are so many things that I want to get to right off the bat, because in a normal situation, there's about 10 things in this show that I could have led off with that is worth talking about right at the top. And we talked a little bit about it already, just that they're not doing anything well. But what is this team's identity exactly? So let's start on offense. What is their identity on offense? You start with a base offense that you want to execute. All right, so are they a stretch zone team? Are they an inside running team? Are they a quick bubble screen team? Are they a team that wants to attack on the outsides one-on-one to Allen Lazard and Romeo Doubs? Are they a middle of the field team? There's nothing. Are they a screen team? What are they? There is no offensive identity on this team right now. And it is beyond clear. It is beyond clear that this team has to be a run-first team with a sound defense and a special teams that doesn't have massive screw-ups. They are an inconsistent defense that had a special teams that just had some pretty massive screw ups, and an offense that has no identity and has seemingly no desire to run the football. So what is the goal exactly then? I get that they want to take advantage of the open space on defense. If that means it's outside, deep down the field, that's what they want to take advantage of. If you think there's any defensive coordinator right now that is losing sleep about you throwing 50-50 balls to Allen Lazard or Romeo Doubs on the outside, you are sadly mistaken. Yeah, you're going to complete a couple. Allen Lazard had a 35-yard completion down the sideline. Do you have any idea the degree of difficulty on that catch? He is in between two defenders. The ball had to be perfectly placed, and then Allen Lazard had to somehow crazily manipulate his body to get 2 feet down to just get 35 yards on a play. That play needed like the exact execution that it got. If one thing goes slightly different, not only is that maybe incomplete, that could have easily been picked. Like Aaron Rodgers and Allen Lazard individually needed to be perfect on that play for that to work. You can't make an offense out of that. You can't do that over and over. The percentage on that play is extremely small. And kudos, tip your cap to Lazard and Rodgers for completing that one. But we have seen deep shot, deep shot, deep shot, deep shot, incomplete, 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 incomplete. Defenses are not scared of you on the outside. They have no fear in matching up one-on-one with you, especially when they've got corners like Sauce Gardner, who, like Romeo Doubs is probably your one kind of guy who has the potential to maybe be that explosive guy right now. And Sauce Gardner is just going to match him up and be like, I'm good. Don't worry about it. Like, we're fine. Like, if they have anyone like that, which most teams have a good corner, like, okay, that's done. And like I said, you can maybe hit like Lazard on the back shoulder in the end zone. Okay, great. You can hit on two of like Green Bay hit on two of those. They hit on two explosives. You're not going to beat anybody that way. So if that's your offense, if that's your identity, is picking on those mismatches, hey, they're going to give us one-on-one outside, we're going to take those shots. You don't have the personnel to do that. You cannot make a living doing that. And again, I will say this with emphasis again. If your idea of the mismatch is Romeo Doubs one-on-one against Sauce Gardner or Allen Lazard one-on-one on the outside and just hero balls down the field to take advantage of that single high safety because they're starting to pack the box. By the way, they're not even packing the box in the second half. They're playing two deep safeties. So then like it's all bad on offense right now. And there's nothing you can lean on. So they have no identity on offense whatsoever. Nothing that they can go to. And heaven forbid, with Aaron Jones, once again at halftime, has 4 touches. And you can very clearly say, Andy, did you see the offensive line and defensive line for the Jets in this game? Do you really want to keep running into Quinnen Williams for 5-yard losses? Is that a good idea to keep giving Aaron Jones the ball? No, it's not. But it'd be nice if Aaron Rodgers hit Aaron Jones on the 9 route on the outside where he was wide open and Rodgers threw him out of bounds. Would certainly be nice if they got him a little bit more involved sideline to sideline rather than just running up the middle to those, gap shooting defensive linemen. And actually in the second half, we saw get those defensive linemen flying up the field and then run a trap or like a quick draw inside to get them where they're like trying to, over pursue a little bit. Like some of that worked in the second half, but they ran those to Dillon, of course, and not to Aaron Jones. It is maddening. Like, I don't even care if like the offensive line's getting their butt kicked. You still have to figure out a way to get Aaron Jones the ball more than 4 times in the first half. Next, again, we could have led off with this as well. Where is the heart of this football team and who is the heart of this football team? There seems to be nobody that is willing to step up and get this team fired up to the point that it needs to be to play a good football game against a Jets team that quite frankly is not very good. We'll talk about more on that at the end. But you're coming off a really tough loss. You're 3-2. The Giants beat you in London. And I don't know if there's like the excuses of, well, it was overseas and you weren't prepared, but clearly we'll get back to Green Bay and play at home and play the Jets and things are going to be fine. It's not. And when it's 3-3 at halftime and you get a 3-and-out to start the second half, like even if what you did in the first half didn't work, all right, I know halftime adjustments are overrated. There's not enough time to do a ton, but like, can you say something at halftime to get this group motivated? Somebody, please? Who is that player? it seems to me that this is a group that lacks the overall leadership. And I have been effusive in my praise for how this team has built the roster with a veteran in every room. Rodgers and Aaron Jones. You've got Alan Lazard, Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb. You've got Mercedes Lewis. You've got Bakhtiari. You've got Kenny Clark, Dean Lowry on the defensive line, Devondre Campbell. You've got Rasul Douglas. You've got Amos. You've got Mason Crosby. You've got leaders in every room. Will somebody please step up and say, like, hey, this is not acceptable, and we're going to go out and we're going to change it. And right now, I cannot point to any player or any part of this team or anything that shows that this team has any sort of heart of the champion to go and actually overcome some of the adversity that's being thrown at them and actually go out and play a reasonably decent game of football. That is the ugliest brand of football that you can possibly imagine that they just played against the Jets. Every part of it, special teams, offense, defense, blocking, tackling, any part that you want to point to was ugly. Drops, poor passes, inaccuracies, fumbles, blocked punts, blocked field goals. Pick your poison. It was all ugly, and Green Bay never just got over it. Never had the heart to overcome any of it, even close. It was just heartless, and it was so disappointing and aggravating. And it wouldn't, if this is just a one game sample, fine, so be it. It's not a big deal. But this is the brand of football that we've seen from them the vast majority of the season. And we can talk a lot about the offense and the identity on offense and all those sort of things. I will say, of everything in this game, there's a lot of ugly. There's nothing as ugly as the blocking in this game. The blocking on offense, the blocking on field goal protection, the blocking on punt protection, the blocking all over the place was terrible. If they block better on offense, if they block better on the punt team, if they block better on the field goal team, that's 7 points less for the Jets based off of a block punt. That's 3 points more for your offense. And I guarantee you, if you give Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones a little bit more real estate to work with, they're probably going to put a few more points on the board as well. This offensive line is so far below expectations right now that it is really hard to judge almost anything else on offense. The first part of that game, you've got Jets flying in the backfield at 90 miles an hour, and good luck to your running backs and quarterbacks. And that is a force multiplier that makes everything worse. You can't block, that makes Rodgers worse. You can't block, that makes Dillon worse. You can't block, that makes Jones worse. You can't block, that makes your receivers worse. You can't block, that makes your tight ends worse. It starts there. Josh Myers has to play better. John Runyon Jr. has to play better. Newman gets benched. They bring in Hansen. Hansen gets hurt. They bring in Newman. Newman stinks it up again. Newman at fault on the field goal block. Him and Hansen right there on the field goal block. Elton Jenkins, David Bakhtiari have to be better. All of it. This was four-man rush. This was not Robert Saleh throwing crazy crap like Wink Martindale or this was a four-man rush with some twists and stunts. And Green Bay was looking around like they had no idea how to overcome it. This is David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, a second-round center, really solid guard last year in John Runyon Jr., who played really sound football a season ago. And yeah, you know what? You've got a weak point at right guard. You can't overcome one weak point on your offensive line. And it wasn't even just getting out-muscled or out-physical. They were outsmarted. This offensive line couldn't get it together to pick up a stunt on multiple occasions. That is completely unacceptable. And whatever, Luke Butkus has been doing, this offensive line, we have bragged about for years what Adam Stenavich has done with some really crappy offensive lines at times. This is a offensive line that has seemingly almost all the pieces, maybe missing a player, but they can't get anything going at all. And I don't know how many times we have heard we got to get our best five guys on the line. Best five guys. It's just the best five guys. We don't care where they're playing. We're getting our best five guys out there. Best five guys. I could do a tape of Matt LaFleur saying best five guys that would be longer than this episode. Because it's come up so many times. Yet you've got Jake Hansen and Royce Newman on the field and Yosh Nijman on the bench. That doesn't seem like best 5 guys. That seems stupid. It just does. And listen, maybe Yash is a nightmare at right tackle. Let's see. Let's try. Let's try, because right now the offensive line is a nightmare. And maybe, just maybe, even if Yash is a nightmare at right tackle, maybe getting Elton at right guard, maybe he all of a sudden starts playing really good at right guard. And you know what? Maybe that helps solidify the interior of the offensive line. And then maybe you just put a tight end on that side to help Yash a little bit. And maybe that helps that. And all of a sudden, left to right, Bakhtiari and Runyon and Myers and Jenkins look better because you don't have that issue at right guard. And even if right tackle is worse because Jenkins isn't out there and you've got, Yash kind of getting through some ups and downs, all right, at least then, like, you can help that one spot rather than all of it seemingly falling apart, at all times. Like, it starts with blocking. And if I had to, we could literally do a laundry list, and guess what? We're going to do a laundry list of things that have been going wrong. But in this game, if I had to label 1A on my list of issues, it's the blocking and the play of the offensive line. And like I said, it's not just permeating itself on the offense. They blocked a kick because you couldn't block up front. They blocked a punt because you couldn't block up front. That's not all on the offensive line. The punt block clearly is not. That is not offensive lineman. But the field goal block, or the field goal block was. That's Newman and Hansen. And I'm no special teams expert. I will be the first to readily admit that. Putting a 3-man group on the interior of Coco, Hansen, and Royce Newman on the left side of the field goal protection team, probably not the best idea. Probably not the best idea. This is a issue that stems to everything, right? This is not just coaching. This is not just players. This is roster construction. This is player development. This is game planning and scheme. This is execution. This is the players. This is all of it. This is going to take a major gut check by the Packers organization as a whole. And I want to talk about that roster construction a little bit, because a couple things. First of all, it is very clear, abundantly clear, that the Packers simply do not have the needed weapons and playmakers along the offense. And we can talk about the blocking, right? Because, and I'll say it right now, I don't care if they had Christian McCaffrey in the backfield and Devontae Adams at wide receiver and DJ Moore on the other side and Darren Waller at tight end. Like, those things are going to help. But if you can't block up front, you're still going to have an absolute nightmare of a time trying to win in the NFL. And the offensive line, it starts there. You have to block up front. So it has to start there. But all that being said, we talked about it with Ben Solak last week. If you missed that episode, I would highly recommend checking it out. Green Bay has nobody that can stretch the field or scares you to the outside. I just talked about it a minute ago. You can throw deep bombs to Lazard or Cobb or Dobbs or Watson or Watkins or Rodgers or Toure or any of them, and it's not going to fear. You're not going to put any fear in the defense. And they're going to feel like they can play single high safety. They can bring their corners and play press man. They've got an extra guy in the box to stop the run, and everything is going to feel condensed to the point of being claustrophobic if you're a quarterback. Add in Aaron Rodgers not having the same mobility that he once did, not having the arm talent that he once did, and everything is going to be extremely difficult. And Matt LaFleur has some things that he can do to work around that. He has a lot of the run solutions. He's got a lot of the, little checkdowns. He's got a lot of the little quick plays that the defense is willing to give you. You can live in that world at times, but you have to have players who can run after the catch, because you can't make a living of going 14 plays, 85 yards, time after time after time after time. It's just not going to work. You have to get explosives either down the field with the big play attempts, which we've already covered you can't do with the talent and the talent that you have on the outside right now, or you've got to have the guys like the Deebo Samuels, the AJ Browns, etc., where you can get the ball in their hands and they can go. And if we look at this offense and give a realistic diagnosis of the playmakers on offense right now, realistically, the only one player that is giving you any sort of fear is Aaron Jones. It doesn't help that Green Bay doesn't seem to have any idea how to actually get the ball in his hands in space to be able to make those plays, but him being the only one is clearly a major, major problem. And Christian Watson, I do think, has the ability to have that playmaking skill and get the ball in his hands and make plays. But they've limited his usage. They don't seem to be actually willing to use him as a true wide receiver. They're getting him a couple gadget plays per game, and it has left a ton to be desired. Add in the fact that he can't stay on the field due to injury and some of the hamstring issues, and that has basically been put to the side for now as like a maybe that could kind of be something at some point. But if we're being realistic about it, if we're being truly realistic about it, that's probably a player that maybe looks really good a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, where he's a fully complete player. Expecting him to get to the point where you need him to be a true legitimate playmaker in this offense by the end of this season, while fighting through hamstring injuries, missing training camp, and just being a rookie who didn't play a ton of true wide receiver snaps at a small school, no offense to North Dakota State, who's a fantastic school overall, but like, that's just not realistic. That's not setting yourself up for success. And they don't have, like, Robert Tonyan had like a 10 catch game, but he's getting what's there. Like, he's not getting the ball and doing anything with it. Like, Allen Lazard is not getting the ball in his hands and doing anything with it. Sammy Watkins isn't going to be that. Amari Rodgers isn't going to be that. Now Randall Cobb is hurt, and even he has limited ability to do that. You don't have that player that gets the ball in their hands and is just able to go, except for Aaron Jones. AJ Dillon can't do that. We saw him have opportunities in the open field, like on that little like outside screen, like a swing pass, right? They throw it was like on, I think, a second and whatever. It was like, I think it was like a third and short. And AJ Dillon gets the little swing pass, and he's one-on-one with, I think it was a corner safety and in the open field, and Dillon just can't make that player miss. So you just don't have the guys that are able to make people miss and get those explosive plays after the catch. So we've covered the fact that you don't have guys that can win on the outside, that you can throw it to down the field, and you don't have guys that can get the ball in their hands on the simple plays and make anything with it down the field, which means that your margin for error is extremely, extremely thin. And then add on top of it, you're not blocking up front, and Aaron Rodgers is like he's you know, I don't know like what adjective we want to use here, but like he's clearly not the same quarterback, right? The arm talent is just not there. And like it was, like he just doesn't have the same zip on his ball that he did in his prime. That's not a hot take. That's just what it is. And the mobility is basically gone, right? We've seen him now throughout this season try to do that play where he's got that little step up in the pocket to the right, where you can step up in the pocket and roll to his right and throw it on the field. He steps up in that pocket and he's like, he just can't get there. Like he just can't get through that little hole to make a play. Every once in a while, we saw that play to Tonyan along the sideline where he was able to kind of escape from a sack and use his arm to get the ball to Tonyan. We see a flash of that every once in a while, but you can't live in that world anymore. And part of that, when we're talking about roster construction, is the issue as well. You are paying Aaron Rodgers to be the MVP and the player who can elevate everybody around you. He can get you into the right call at the line of scrimmage. He can get out, the ball out of his hands quickly. He can pinpoint the ball with accuracy. He can make a good play out of a bad play where he escapes out of the pocket and rolls right and makes some of those dynamic plays. That's the player that you're paying the top dollar for as the highest paid player in football, basically, right? Except he's not that anymore. He's got to be like the point guard of the offense, where he just kind of gets the ball and distributes in hopes that everyone else kind of does the heavy lifting. And this is not an offense that has the weapons. There's no more Devontae Adams. There's not an MVS to stretch the field. There's not those weapons on the outside to where you can just get the ball and let the receivers or the talent do the heavy lifting. Add in an offensive line that's leaky and him trying to escape and get out of pressure and just being like 5 steps slower than what he used to be. And this is ultimately what you get. You get a 10-point performance against the New York Jets at home where nothing is working. And I mean nothing is working. So I talked about, I did an episode a few weeks ago of how the Packers really missed the boat with the A.J. Brown trade. And some of that maybe is benefit of hindsight. But I do think Green Bay has an issue where they're just ultimately valuing their long-term development of draft picks too much. And listen, I am a draft and develop guy. I think that overall philosophy is the right philosophy, but there comes a time and a place where your roster is set as such, and this is probably more for like the last 2 years than probably this year, but there's a time and a place where you have to go all in and trade some of your future assets to make sure that you have the talent to win in that moment. And like, let's just say for this season's sake, for like AJ Brown, right? To give you a guy that can actually win after the catch and be a bit of a playmaker to help your offense out. He was traded, I think, for like a first and a third, first and a fourth, something like that. I forget exactly what the trade terms were, but Green Bay had 2 firsts and 2 second round picks going into that draft, right? And it was very clear that after trading Davante, that they needed to find a way to gain talent to help win now. They go and they get Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, and use the 2 seconds to get up and get Christian Watson. Quay Walker basically got benched in some regard where he was no longer on the field in obvious passing downs. They took him off the field and put Rudy Ford in at safety, and Adrian Amos moved into the box. Devontae Wyatt is borderline not playing, like just a handful of snaps per game and not making an impact. And Christian Watson, we've talked about, there's some flash there. And I'll say it straight up, I like the long-term, like what I think they can be long-term for Quay and for Devontae and for Christian. I think they all have the ability to be really good players down the line, but they're not right now. And this is of course somewhat tongue-in-cheek and somewhat benefit of hindsight as well, but I dare you to call the Eagles right now and say, hey, we'll give you Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, and Christian Watson for AJ Brown, and see how fast they hang up the phone. Like, you can value draft picks too much. You just can. And that isn't to say that all three of those guys, like, you might be able to play this clip back in a few years and like when AJ Brown is probably a little bit on the decline and maybe, working through some injuries or stuff. And hopefully Devontae Wyatt, Christian Watson, and Quay Walker are all, fighting for Pro Bowl spots, whatever like the Pro Bowl is at that point. But and you might be able to play that back and say like, dude, how idiot of a take was that? But the truth is that your window is right now. Your window's not 2-3 years from now. Or at least the window had been open, it seemed like. And you get guys that are probably going to be good 2-3 years from now. And AJ Brown is pretty darn good right now and would give your offense probably a pretty big boost. And right now, if you took Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, and Christian Watson, well, Wyatt's not playing, Watson didn't play, and Quay Walker's only basically now on early downs. If you took those 3 off the field, I don't know that you would actually miss all that much, if we're being totally honest, especially the way Chris Barnes was playing prior to his injury. And now all of a sudden you're playing Rudy Ford at safety and Adrian Amos in the box. Devontae Wyatt not really playing. You've got 4 good defensive linemen outside of him that are playing ahead of him anyway. And, Christian Watson, you've got depth at wide receiver. That's not going to change him. And all of a sudden you've got AJ Brown instead of Christian Watson. Yeah, sign me up for that. And before you say, well, like salary cap, no, AJ Brown right now, his salary cap for this season fits in the salary cap. So that's not an excuse either. So the construction of this team, the big thing that I want to say is, there's just not enough weapons. And I feel for Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur in some capacity, but they've got to make work with what they have, and they're doing a very poor job of that. And Aaron Rodgers is getting paid to be the guy that elevates everyone else, and he's not. He is playing poor football. Is everything else falling apart around him? Is the offensive line allowing easy pressure? Yes. Are the weapons on the outside getting open? No. Is everyone else doing their job? No. But he is the player that is paid for and thought of as the guy who can elevate everyone else. And he's not, and he has to hit those throws. Like when you've got Aaron Jones streaking down the field, you have to hit that throw. When you've got Robert Tonyan wide open, for a first down on your first drive of the game, and you underthrow him almost to a pick 6 because the ball bounces in the air almost off of Tonyan's hands, that should have been an easy completion for a first down. Those are the things that can't happen right now for Aaron Rodgers. So the other thing that I'll say here is I know all everyone's going to be, well, Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey, or, DJ Moore, or whomever, right? There is no one thing right now that Green Bay can do. There's not a Robbie Anderson, a Christian McCaffrey, a DJ Moore, Zach Tom at guard, Elton Jenkins moving inside, more press man, a new kick returner, new punt returner. There's no one or even probably two things that's going to fix everything. There's nothing. This is going to have to be a team that has a major gut check and figures things out moving forward and finds a way to elevate everything as a team right now, or they are going nowhere, and it's going to get very ugly very fast. And just as we thought some things were starting to get better, special teams, for example, that rears its ugly head. You can't have a field goal block that takes 3 points off the board in that game. You can't have a punt block that goes for 7 the other way. And hey, kudos, you got a punt block of your own. Green Bay's offense squanders that opportunity away by going backwards when they get the football. And that's not a special teams issue, but that's just the uncomplimentary football that Green Bay is playing at this very moment. Special teams, man, like it literally felt like that's the one unit that was like starting to get things together, and then they showed that they have the ability to lose a game in and of itself. Now they didn't do that because the offense was hot garbage as well. But if that was a close game, even if the offense put up a couple more drives in that game, that's a game that they probably lose simply due to their special teams. Meanwhile, the defense, I thought there was some really good defense in this game. The first half was extremely impressive. Yes, against Zach Wilson. Yes, whatever. But I thought they had a really nice first half. And then you get the 3-and-out in the second half, and then the bizarro stretch of Green Bay defensive play rears its ugly head. And I am willing to, like, if this was, again, the first time this happened, I would be willing to give a lot more forgiveness because the offense and special teams set the defense up for failure this entire game. But game's still in the balance. Game very much still in the balance. The Jets go 3 straight drives in the second half. 4 plays, 74 yards, touchdown. 5 plays, 66 yards, touchdown. 13 plays, 58 yards, field goal. And at the end of the day, like we could make the easy argument, right? That the Packers defense allowed the Jets 20 points in this game because the 7 was clearly on the special teams. But that's still, against Zach Wilson and friends, not good enough at home. 20 points allowed. Like the average in the NFL right now is 21 points. I don't consider the Jets one of the better offenses in the NFL. I just don't. So they were around an average performance, and they didn't really get any takeaways or anything like that either. That's not a good enough performance. And when the game is in the balance and your team needs you to step up, your offense is struggling, your special teams is struggling, you have to be the heart of this team. Again, 4 plays, 74 yards, touchdown, 5 plays, 66 yards, touchdown, 13 plays, 58 yards, field goal. And the key thing there was tackling. They really struggled to tackle, especially Breece Hall in this game. Other things I'll say, we can talk about the talent that they don't have on the team, some of the ingredients that they're missing. We can talk about the scheme. We can talk about the coaches. There are way too many players that are just not playing good enough football. Aaron Rodgers, A.J. Dillon, Elton Jenkins, Adrian Amos, Eric Stokes, Devondre Campbell, Quay Walker, John Runyon, Josh Myers, Darnell Savage. None of them are playing the football, and I'm sure there's more too. You could certainly make an argument Rasul Douglas. You could certainly make an argument, of probably multiple other players. Dean Lowry, Preston Smith, you could make an argument for. Let's just say the truth, right? There's very few players that are playing up to the level of what you would expect out of them. But that comes down to players too. It is a constant state of a different individual player screwing something up on almost every play. We got drops from A.J. Dillon. We got a handoff between Rodgers and Dillon that goes wrong. We got Rodgers missing easy passes. We've got the special teams finally setting the offense up and they go backwards. You got a holding penalty on a big Aaron Jones run. You've got just all of it, right? Like you have nobody complimenting the other part of the team, and you have no players that are playing consistently enough where this offense can actually get anything going, or the defense can play consistent defense, or the special teams can get out of its own way and not have a massive screw up. Like there's a new individual player who's screwing something up on almost every play. And that goes to coaching, that goes to players, that goes to execution, that goes to all of it. It's just really, really bad and so disappointing from a team that's gone and won 13 games in 3 consecutive seasons under Matt LaFleur. Last couple things, and I'm going to try to get through this quickly because I mean we could go on for a while here. Trust me, we could go for a lot longer. I hated how they responded to adversity in this game. First of all, losing a game a week ago and just coming back and crapping the bed for the second consecutive week is not doing anything to quell any fears of where this team is headed. But even in this game, right, you're 3-3 going into halftime. You get a 3 and out, and then the Packers have their offensive struggles, and the Jets get the ball. The Jets finally get their first touchdown, and it's 10-3. Okay, how do you respond? You finally get punched in the face. You're down by a touchdown. It's 10-3. How do you respond? Packers offense immediately has to punt the ball away. Punt is blocked, and it's a touchdown at 17-3. And now the game is totally different. They did not respond to adversity at all. All right, so how do you respond to that? 17-3. The Packers offense finally goes down. They score a touchdown. They make it 17-10. All right, there's hope. There's some real hope that Green Bay can get back in the game. How do they respond? How can they get the ball back? Jets go down and immediately drive and score a touchdown, make it 24-10. All right, 24-10, not undoable, right? It's the Jets. Like, I know things haven't been going great, but you've got Aaron Rodgers. There's always a puncher's chance. How do you respond to that? They ultimately get a turnover on downs, still 24-10. All right, the defense, like the chance of victory here is extremely slim, but you get a 3 and out. You still got 3 timeouts. Maybe you can go down and score, get the ball back, go down and score again. Probably unlikely, but how do you respond? Jets go on a 13-play drive, taking 6 minutes and 38 seconds off the clock, using up Green Bay's timeouts, and they score a field goal, making it a 3-score game. Never responded back. They had the one touchdown to make it 17-10, and then immediately give up a touchdown to make it 24-10. And then it's just over. Did not respond to adversity at all. You had a little Matt LaFleur huddle along the sideline when it was 0-0, trying to, after that A.J. Dillon fumble, where he's trying to get everything motivated. It was 0-0 at that time. They lost 27-10. And maybe the biggest kick to the gut or groin or any other body part that you want to get kicked in just for the sake of fun, I would make a very strong argument that the Jets defense, let's be real, the Jets defense had a nice game, right? But overall in this game, the Jets weren't good. The Jets were not good in this game, specifically on offense and special teams. You had the blocked punt by the Jets that they allowed that gave Green Bay great field position. They missed a field goal. They were 1 of 11 on third down. Zach Wilson was 10 of 18 for 110 yards, 2 sacks, no touchdowns. Jets didn't hit 300 yards of total offense. They had 7 penalties for 79 yards, including like some ridiculous ones that gave Green Bay first downs. And the Packers lost by 17 at home to a Jets team that, for the most part, besides their defense, played like total crap. That is the most discouraging thing of everything, is the Jets, a fine football team that I don't think is quite hitting its stride yet and really doesn't have a quarterback, played a bad game overall and won by 17 against Green Bay in Green Bay. So what can Green Bay do from here? As I mentioned earlier, there's no perfect solution. There's no one thing that they're going to be able to do. There's a couple things I would start off with, and this is probably in vain, but this is where I would start. Adam Stenavich is going back in the offensive line room full-time. We'll figure something else out for like LaFleur, probably whether LaFleur has to take more on from an offensive standpoint, or you give Mike Clements more. I don't know what from an offensive coordinator standpoint, but Adam Stenavich has to live in the offensive line room right now. That is the easiest, simplest thing that, like, he's been able to make magic work with that offensive line through the last 3 years. He's got to do it again with much better players this time around. Sorry, Luke Butkus, it hasn't been good enough. Adam's got to take over, and that has to be the first thing. And yes, I would move Elgton Jenkins to guard, put Yash out to right tackle. Let's try something different. Will it work? No idea. Am I willing to give it a shot? You bet I am. I don't know, maybe you can look at a veteran offensive tackle. I don't know what the status of a Brian Bulaga is, but like that's how crazy it's gotten. Like, do you have to make a call to Brian Bulaga to see if his knee's still attached, to see if that could potentially work? Or like something, is there a veteran offensive tackle in Eric Fisher, something out there that could potentially work, that could just be a serviceable right tackle if you don't trust Yash over there? Because if they don't trust Yash and Elgton can't play it, they don't have a right tackle. And that's a major problem. That goes back to roster building as well. But is there something they can do in the meantime? Elgton's going back to guard. Yash is moving out to right tackle. I do think they have to find somebody who can stretch the field. Personally, I would not put more investment into this season. I don't think it's smart to do at this point. But if you want to give your team a puncher's chance at even doing anything remotely competitive the remainder of this year, you have to acquire somebody who can stretch the field. I immediately saw people be like, so what, Aaron Rodgers can miss him by 15 yards again? Even just the threat of somebody on the outside will give defenses a little bit more pause to playing single high and cramming everything back up quite as much. If you've got somebody who can beat you, maybe it has to be a more like a bigger jump ball type target. Maybe it's not a speed guy. Maybe it's somebody who can win a jump ball on the outside with more consistency. I don't know. I don't have a player in mind. I just don't. I don't think there's going to be somebody that you're going to be readily available to find and trade for that player. But if you want to have a legitimate chance, that, like I said, we talked all episode about not having a guy on the outside that can do what you need them to do. You have to go find somebody. Or Brian Gutekunst has got to pull his Rasul Douglas out of his hat and find some crazy practice squad wide receiver that all of a sudden plays like Randy Moss. Like, you got to figure out something, because teams don't honor your deep threats on the outside, and that is a major, major problem right now. And then you've got to become a run first team. I don't care if they've got 11 guys in the box. You've got to figure out something more creative to run the ball. Guess what? Saquon Barkley sees 8-man boxes all the time. This Jets offense with Breece Hall and Michael Carter, the Packers were stacking the box against them and making Zach Wilson beat them. Guess what? They stuck with it. Breece Hall was fantastic, and they found a way to be a run-first team. Is it pretty all the time? No. But the Giants and the Jets played the brand of football that the Packers need to be playing. They've got to be a run-first team that plays good defense and wins ugly. This is not the Greg Jennings, James Jones, Donald Driver, Jermichael Finley, Jordy Nelson, explosive playmakers everywhere with a, 20-something quarterback who's got a laser rocket arm and legs that can run for 100 yards if you let him. This is not that team. You have to let Jones and Dillon do the heavy lifting. That starts up front. You've got to have blockers. You've got to use your wide receivers that are blockers on the outside. Adam Stenavich has got to get this offensive line to step up. It is a serious, serious gut check time for this organization right now. How they respond to this adversity, better be better than what we saw against the Jets after an ugly loss to the Giants. But we're about to learn a lot about Matt LaFleur and this organization as a whole on how they respond to this. And like I said, it is a major gut check time right now for the organization as a whole. We could go probably an hour more on some of the things that were super ugly in this game, but I guess that's what the rest of this week is for, because it's going to be a rough week in Packerland once again. I will do my best to find some positives moving forward. Hopefully the All-22 will diagnose some things that are maybe easy fixes, or maybe some things that went right and we just didn't get to see them. I'm not super hopeful of that, but you never quite know what you're going to see on the All-22, and the tape doesn't lie. So I will be back tomorrow to break down that beautiful tape and see if there's anything else that stood out. So make sure to subscribe if you have not already. I will be back for Pack-A-Day Live on Tuesday with Peter Bukowski. It feels appropriate if we're going to go scorched earth this week to bring in Peter to go over this current state of the Green Bay Packers. So that will be Pack-A-Day Live. That does it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. There's a lot of season left, but until next time, and as always, and even today when things look the bleakest, go Pack Go.